All right, last problem, number 20, for the solutions to intermediate algebra practice problems. Solve, check, and graph the solution on a number line. These will be absolute value inequalities. And part A, absolute value of 2x minus 5 is less than or equal to negative 1. Remember that the absolute value of anything is always greater than or equal to 0, so it will never be less than negative 1. So this is simply no solution. You stop right there. You could put that or this. Okay? And that's because absolute value is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay? All right, so let's go on to B. Absolute value of 2x minus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 5. Well, no matter what you're taking the absolute value of, this side will always be greater than or equal to 0, right? That's always greater than or equal to 0. So that will necessarily always be greater than 5. So this is all real numbers. That's the solution. All real numbers, or in interval notation, you could say this. Both A and B are thinking problems. Instead of just kind of going with the formula, you assess the entire problem, the concept, and you're able to get done right away if you just think it through. All right, let's go on to C. All right, absolute value of 2x minus 5 is less than or equal to 1. All right, now this is going to be more formulaic. We're saying the absolute value is less than or equal to 1. So remember that gets scrunched between negative 1 and positive 1. So negative 1 is less than or equal than what's in the absolute value, and that's less than or equal to 1. So when you have an absolute value less than a number greater than 0, it gets scrunched between those two numbers. All right, so now we just solve this the way we have been doing with other inequalities. So we have 4 is less than or equal to 2x, which is less than or equal to 6. And then we could just divide everything by 2 to get 2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 3. So now it says to graph it. Actually, we could also write this in interval notation. This is going to be between 2 and 3. And then the graph, here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say. So it's going to be in between 2 and 3. And you can check your work by picking a number like 2.5 and make sure when you plug this in here, it's true. So if you had 2 times 2.5, that would give you 5. 5 minus 5 is 0, and the absolute value of 0 is less than or equal to 1. So you could just do a little quick check like that, and any other number won't work. So if you plug in 0 for x, you'll see that this is false, or if you pick a number bigger, like 4 or bigger, you'll find out that it's false. So that's the correct answer. Let's go back up to B for a second. I forgot to graph it. All right, to graph this, let's get my graph on. It's all real numbers. So we just graph the entire number line, and that would be the solution. On part A, if I were going to graph it, you have a number line, there's 0. It's no real number, so you don't have anything shown at all. Okay, so there's B, there's C. Now let's go on to D. Truly the last problem on the practice test. So we've got absolute value of 4x minus 5 is greater than 7. So this breaks up into two possibilities. Either what's in there is greater than 7, or what's inside there is less than negative 7. So when it's a greater than, you have to break it up into two pieces. You put the or between the two problems. Because what you're saying is you want to distance the distance here has to be more than 7 spaces away. So you'll see something with arrows going in opposite directions, basically. All right, so let's solve each of these. And also keep in mind that if the absolute value was not isolated, like if it said plus 3, you'd have to first isolate that. In these examples, both C and D, it was already isolated. Okay, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides. All right, so on the left-hand side, that gives me 4x is greater than 12, divide by 3, so we've got x is greater than 3. And on the right-hand side, we have 4x is less than negative 2, so if you divide by 4, you get x is less than negative 1/2. All right, so what does that look like on the number line? So let's say here's 0, let's say 1, 2, 3. It's negative 3. Okay, so we've got greater than 3. So here's 3, and so I've got to do numbers to the right of 3, and it's greater than as opposed to greater than or equal, so we need a parentheses here at 3, and then going to the right. Oops. And this is or x could be less than negative 1/2. So here's negative 1/2, let's say about here. So we just put a parentheses opening to the left. All right, so we've solved it. Now I did say to check it, so let's do a quick check in our head. If we put in 0, that should not be a solution. And convince yourself if you put 0 into this original problem, you would have absolute value of negative 5, which is just 5. 5 greater than 7 is false. So it looks like I've got it going the right direction. And also, when greater than, you basically should have the arrows going in opposite directions like this. Okay, practice, practice, practice. Go back and try them all over again. Good luck.